Everything woke turns to shit.
Guys, I'm sure you've all heard by now, the hit show The Boys
has gone fully woke.
All of a sudden, super woke, never was before. Really just blindsided us with no warning or any inclination of wokeness in any of the previous seasons.
There are illegal immigrants pouring into this country every day, and any one of them could be a super terrorist. Keep America safe again.
So woke that they should change their name to something less masculine and less heteronormative. Maybe the non-binaries. Truly one of the most ruthless betrayals in documented history. In all seriousness, the new season of Les Boys seems like it's been ruffling some feathers amongst the anti-woke crowd, which is really funny to me because this show has been pretty progressive right from the start. But before we get into this and look at some of the arguments being made, because you know me. Actually, you don't know me because this is my first video. But in order to get to know me, you gotta know that I'm all about arguments and looking at what people have to say. So before we get into this, I think it's important that we know what woke or wokeness means.
Woke M&Ms have returned. The green M&M got her boots back, but apparently is now a lesbian, maybe?
Otherwise, we just end up using these vapid and overplayed words and phrases that ultimately mean everything and nothing at the same time.
You know what woke means? It means you're a loser.
I think we need to look to the experts for this one. Maybe someone who's written an entire chapter of a book defining wokeness. They'll be able to clear this up. They'll get to the bottom of this.
Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral.
Oh, maybe the experts are still working out a few kinks. So let's see if there's anyone else who can give us a working definition. Chaya Raichik, a true philosopher god king of the anti-woke movement and the brilliant mind behind the Libs of TikTok Twitter page, was asked for her definition of wokeness. And given that she's mustered up quite a successful career for herself in the field, I know we could turn to her as an authority on the topic.
How do you define wokeness?
Wokeness is the destruction of normalcy and
What the flip, guys? I thought you were all about words having and retaining their meaning in the face of impending postmodernism.
So people say to me, do you believe in God? And I think, okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do?
Bruh.
What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say as the questioner,
well, we already know what all those things mean, except belief in God. And I think,
or at least you claim to be.
It depends on what you mean by this. It depends on what you mean. You become postmodern all of a sudden.
Postmodern.
Neo-Marxist.
Anyway, for the time being, let me try to steelman the argument and say that when most people use the term woke as a pejorative, they probably mean progressivism.
Plus-sized, obese, purple M&M.
And I'm trying to be as good faith as possible. That's what the dictionary says. So go after them over at the good old dictionary headquarters. And I'll be the first to say that I think some progressives can be ultra puritanical and coalition building, and that's coming from me, who is a progressive. I am a friendly fire. Pew, pew, pew. But to morph the term woke into this all-encompassing concept and just throw it at any idea or person that you disagree with politically, it's kind of lazy. It's a little bit lazy. Especially when we look at the origins of the term, the good old etymology. Hey, Jamie, pull up the etymological origins. TV show, The Boys, used to be one of my favorites. Come on, man. Pointing out the elite's evil tendencies in the form of superheroes. Now it pivots to say Trump people bad and other people good, along with every scene injecting woke nonsense plus new, strong, smart, female, black character. WTF? Woke is when strong black woman smart. I don't know if you knew that. What's the implication here? Probably just racism. And I'm not one of these Trump is the root of all evil guys. I think he's just an outgrowth of a shitty system. But for this guy to imply that he's not an elite is amazing. The guy was, wait for it, the president. That's pretty elite, if you ask me. He was also a New York billionaire celebrity business mogul. He didn't do any of the swamp draining that he campaigned on. He took an ungodly amount of money from Sheldon Adelson while claiming that he was better than his contemporaries who were all bought and paid for.
That's all of his donors and special interests out there. Donors and special interests.
He packed his cabinet full of neocon warmongers like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo while claiming that he was actually anti-war.
I think in terms of war, Trump was the best president of my lifetime because he was getting our troops out.
He vetoed a bill that would have stopped arming and funding the Saudi government as they genocided the Yemenis, and he shipped 200,000 manufacturing jobs overseas after he promised to protect them. The guy is just as corrupt and just as elitist as the politicians he claims he's better than. And just for the record, not a fan of Biden either. I think he's a He's a sleepy guy. Tired in perpetuity. But this is not about Trump or Biden. This is about this silly little guy.
The Boys has always been very politically driven from the start, but I think season 4 is taking it to a whole other level. It has gone fully woke.
This guy does a better job because at least he acknowledges that the show is political in nature. He refers to it as a political satire, but he still pushes this idea that the first 3 seasons were not fully woke. They were semi-woke, 75% woke. In the show, Vought is a rainbow capitalist corporation that values aesthetic progressivism, as opposed to real progressivism, while playing defense for some of the grossest authoritarian psychopaths on the planet. Right off the bat, we're taking shots at corporatists, authoritarian strongmen, and liberals who value the veneer of progressivism in their pursuit of capital. If you watched this far and thought that just because the faux progressive, rainbow capitalist liberals were painted in a bad light, that the show was coming at this from a right-wing perspective, I don't know what to tell you. In addition to the immediate jokes regarding Ezekiel, the anti-gay preacher, and his hypocrisy and exploitative nature.
That's Ezekiel. Preaches all that pray the gay away.
The show is riddled with leftist sentiment right from the jump.
It pushes the boundaries of degeneracy any way that it can, always upping its game. The show has some of the most disturbing and graphic things I've ever seen in a series by far. Like, is some of this really necessary? It's basically inserting gay prawn just like into the show when I think most viewers don't really want to see that.
It's an adult show. It's gonna have graphic elements. Don't watch it. Watch Looney Tunes.
He's supposed to be a symbol for how terrible American patriotism and exceptionalism is, and an obvious parallel to the Orange Man.
I mean, the show starts off with Homelander obviously being not a good guy. The guy wears the American flag. He's obviously some sort of symbol for detrimental nationalism. That was laid out in the first season. So for you to say now it has gone fully woke, what are you talking about? Is it because Frenchie's gay? The anti-woke crowd is upset that the writers made Frenchie gay. I was upset that they made him French. I still watch the show. I'm Canadian. I can make those jokes. We're the real French.
I know I'm kind of a hypocrite for even watching the show, but I'm just shocked by how far the social engineering counter
one.
I know it's meant to be an extreme dark parody and a political satire, but the social engineering paralleling are actual
social engineering mention number 2.
It's becoming obnoxious at this point. We can never just escape into entertainment now, can we?
I'm going to touch on this later in the video, but the idea that the integration between art and politics is new, or more so exasperated today, that's not the case. If you look back at the media and the art that was being made during the Vietnam War era, that shit was really political.
The social engineering for how you're supposed to think. Social engineering are used to polarize and manipulate. Social engineering is going harder than ever.
Inoculate yourself against the woke mind virus and don't be an uninformed
Alright, that's enough. Critical drinker video.
The Boys. You know, I used to be a real fan of that show, to the point where I actually gave the first season a Drinker Recommends award.
So we liked the first season?
With a complex and well-written cast of heroes and villains, plus a whole lot of other characters in between, and a story that brutally skewered everything from fake corporate activism to our obsession with celebrity culture, media manipulation, and cultural warfare.
If that's all he got from the first season, then no wonder he feels that they took a left turn.
I kinda checked out after season 3, partly because I was pretty burned out with superhero stories in general, even shows that subverted the genre, and partly because I could see the way The Boys was heading as a creative property. The bitingly witty satire was becoming more overt and partisan with every season.
So right away, we run into the same issue here. And I'm not saying that you can't take some and leave some when it comes to politics and media. I understand how some right-leaning people might be okay with progressive themes of anti-capitalism or anti-authoritarianism, but then they draw the line when it comes to new, strong, smart, female, black. I disagree with it, and I don't sympathize with it, but some people can cognitive dissonance themselves into weird pretzels, and I'm sure there's some in the anti-woke movement who genuinely do think that their side of the political aisle is the anti-corrupt, anti-corporate, pro-worker side.
It wasn't fighting the power, it was the power. It wasn't raging against the machine, it was part of it.
You know, the same way that they co-opt 1984 and call things Orwellian, when Orwell was a very vocal democratic socialist. Through a rise in right-wing populism, there's been this growing narrative that the anti-woke movement is actually the true voice of the people.
Raging against the machine.
But I can't stress how wrong this is. It's not the case currently, it's not the case historically. It was not the anti-woke crowd that secured the 40-hour work week, better wages, or civil rights. That was progressives. My only point here is, if you noticed from the jump that this was a highly political, allegorical show with themes of anti-capitalism and anti-authoritarianism, but you still didn't realize where this was going, then that's a skill issue. That's a media literacy issue.
So it was off to Rotten Tomatoes for me to check out the reviews. Oh.
I see this argument a lot. It's clearly falling off. Go woke, go broke. Because that worked really well for the Barbie movie.
Never go see Barbie because that stuff is so woke.
But this new season's viewership is up 21%, and almost all the reviews I see here are highly partisan and ideological. It's ironic considering his main gripe with the show is that it's partisan and ideological. Let me just read one of these. While previous seasons would take a jab at both sides of the aisle, creating a more neutral and unbiased view of society, Season 4 seems to have been bought and paid for by the Democratic Party. I don't know if we're talking about the same Democratic Party, but those guys are not exactly progressives. Well, some of them are, but the majority of them are not. While completely catering to the left. It's always been a left-leaning show. Media literacy, media literacy, media literacy. Unlike other episodes, this show reflects all lefties who see anyone right of their view as Hitler. The show caters to morons who are confused about which bathroom to use. Definitely no partisan politics in these reviews, guys. Unbiased. Thought experiment. Put your thought experiment helmets on, folks. If for some reason, Season 4 of The Boys went on to promote conservative values as opposed to progressive ones, do you think that these same people would have the same criticisms? Do you think that they will be bitching about politics in media if the politics in said media were their own? I don't ever see any right-winger complain about the values or the messaging in Mel Gibson's movies. For the record, I like some of Mel Gibson's movies. I think he sucks as a dude.
She's not your friend. You don't have any f***ing friends except me.
But he's got some bangers. And it was just last year when seemingly the entire right wing tried to claim The Sound of Freedom as an embodiment of their values. And for the record, I think that movie was good too. These people don't care about partisan politics in art. They just wish it was their partisan politics.
A show gets popular and goes mainstream, the writers get a little too overconfident and think they can use it as a platform for their own personal hang-ups, the fans start to push back against them, and instead of taking that criticism on board and responding in a constructive manner, they just say, go watch something else, you dick.
How the f did this show have any right-wing fans to begin with? This was not subtle. This is my favorite part at the end here.
Yes, most people with functioning brain cells knew exactly what this show was and where its political sympathies lay. The show was never particularly subtle about its politics or what it expected its audience to take from it. The difference though is that for the first couple of seasons at least, it was actually fun and entertaining because the creative focus was still on the story and characters.
He has to do this thing where he pretends that he was cool with the progressivism in the first seasons because the storyline was good and the ideas were cleverly packaged. But now, since he deems the show no longer clever, the wokeness is unacceptable.
Dumping millions of liters of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River, that's what woke means.
This argument would hold some water if the entirety of your video this far was not predicated solely on partisan politics ruining the show.
And the bitingly witty satire was becoming more overt and partisan with every season. A bad writer, on the other hand, tries to hammer home his opinions on his audience with sheer brute force, and then gets angry and resentful when they push back against it. I'll let you decide which one you used to be and which one you are now.
Mr. Drinker, I thought we had already established that he was always trying to hammer home political messaging. The entire point of a political allegory is to satirize current political landscapes. Why the loaded language and insinuations of such a drastic creative change? This argument seems like cope.
You claim that you knew it was a progressive show.
Yes, most people with functioning brain cells knew exactly what this show was and where its political sympathies lay.
But then you say that you were put off once you could see that the show was going in a more partisan direction. I thought you just acknowledged that the show was always partisan, but it was just too good of a show for you to care, because you're open-minded. If you could sit through season 1 and agree with the political satire, the clowning of liberal corporatism, then maybe you should look into why you thought this was so clever and why this resonated with you. The criticisms that the show was making were coming from the left of the liberal center, not the right. Also, at the end here, he says that he won't be watching season 4.
And no, I don't think I will be watching season 4 of The Boys after all.
I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this, but how do you know that the show has taken such a steep decline if you refuse to watch this season? The only thing I want to say in conclusion is that art and politics are often very intertwined. From some of the greatest novels like 1984, Slaughterhouse-Five, Beloved, to films like Taxi Driver and A Bronx Tale, progressive political messaging has proven to be a successful and compelling formula. Culturally, we've seen this narrative forming among the right that focuses on belittling things like liberal arts, which then only serves to turn those environments into ideological echo chambers. Instead of withdrawing from these fields, why not present yourselves in them? Try making compelling pieces of media that showcase your worldview. Otherwise, we're gonna just keep on getting these successful progressive media programs while the anti-woke crowd just keeps complaining about it. Be the change you want to see the change you want to be. And honestly, at this point, the bar for conservative media is in hell.
We could dominate every woman's sport. Running, swimming, soccer. I said sport, people!
So I'm rooting for you. I want good media too. So if it's you who makes it, then I'm gonna support you. I'm gonna say, yeah, good job. That's a good movie. And that's my first video on this channel. Just scroll down on youtube.com/me and hit the subscribe button.